How's everybody doing? Good. It's a good night at Suncrest. Hey, before I get into the message, can I just speak to everyone in the room who hasn't been baptized yet? If you're not a follower of Christ, it makes perfect sense that you haven't been baptized yet. But if you are a follower of Christ or you're ready to take that step, then I would really encourage you to be baptized. And there's not a better season of the year to do it than as we lead up to Easter, potentially even at our Easter services. I want to invite you to be baptized. I always encourage people just to text going under to the number 94,000. If this is something you're considering, you have questions about it, you want to sort it out a little bit, this is the perfect way to start exploring it. Obviously, we celebrated them tonight. I was with our staff this week, and a few of them were giving me a hard time about how I baptize people. They said, Greg, when you do it, you like lift people off their feet, plunge them down in, yank them back up. And then one of them said, it's like you baptize the hell out of them. I'm like, I guess you could say it that way. I mean, who knows? So if that's a step that you would consider taking, if you've never gone under the water, if you've never done this as your choice, I know some of you may have been baptized as infants, but I think this is a really big decision. I think this season of the year would be a great time to consider that step. So I hope that you'll do that with me. As I step into this new teaching series, I'm about to make to you some outrageous claims. And I want you to know that I know that these are outrageous claims. And even though they are outrageous claims, I want you to know that I say them without any sense of hype or any sense of exaggeration. Here's my first claim. The next 4 weeks, as we're gathered here, could reshape the rest of your life. The next 4 weeks, as we're gathered here, could reshape the whole rest of your life. It could give you an internal peace, not just for a few days, but for the next 20, 30, 50 years that you might be lacking right now. There could be a sense of joy and peace in your life that really isn't present or not as present as you would want it to be. Even a sense of happiness that could come and be a natural part of your life that may not be there right now. And the secret is in the next 4 weeks. It could be that you're wrestling with how to deal with tough things. But if you take what is offered to you over the next 4 weeks, you would become a person who is able to navigate tough things in life with a sense of grace, a sense of peace, and a sense of mission, and it will be beautiful. I know that's an outrageous claim. Actually, in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to present something to you that could change the course of your life immediately. Immediately. Your whole life won't be changed in 30 minutes, and it's not the sermon that's going to change your life. It will be your response or your decision, how seriously you take this, whether you imagine your life could be shaped in this way, but it would be, in one big decision, a course change for the rest of your life that leads you to the 4 weeks that will reshape your entire life. And here's how I know, because it happened to me. When I was in my 20s, I was actually sitting at Suncrest and listening to someone else give a message very similar to the one that I'm going to give you today. It was a time in my life that was not really how I pictured my life would go. I was very overwhelmed by work, by what work was taking out of me, by what I felt like I didn't have to give to it, just overwhelmed all of the time. And at the same time I was doing a lot of work, as some of you did in your 20s and 30s, I was going to grad school. And grad school was just kicking me in the rear. And it's like, I'm not getting enough sleep. I was just overwhelmed. That's the right way to say it. Jenny and I had been married for a few years. And to be honest with you, it wasn't going that well. It definitely wasn't going like we pictured it would go. There were a lot more fights and a lot less of things that we thought it would be. The truth is, we didn't really have many friends. And at that stage of life, and maybe some of you in your 20s or 30s or older can resonate with this, we had been in college not that long before that. And in college, it seemed like friendships came so naturally, so easily, so richly to us. But now, that wasn't the case. And so we're walking through life. I'm walking through life in a way that's a little bit unsettled, is definitely not marked by peace, not quite sure how to navigate the tough things, and did not really have anyone outside of each other, and we were having a tough time to navigate it with. And then I heard a message like the one I'm going to give you today. And it reset the course of our lives to say, hey, we really need to put ourselves intentionally into enough environments where we might find some of these friends. We need supports around us where the weight of our happiness isn't just laid upon the person that we're married to. And we want something that we don't have right now. There has to be something more. And it shaped us. So I want to talk to you today about what that is and how I think it could shape you. But before I get into the prescription, let's begin with a little diagnosis, okay? I'm going to ask you to diagnose yourself just a little bit with a couple of questions. And so here's where we'll begin. A life like Christ. Here's my first question. Where are you right now? If you were to say, is my life like Christ? I'm going to have you do this on a scale of 1 to 10. You're not going to have to tell anybody else. You don't have to show it on your hands. You don't have to write it down. This is all in your mind. But I do want you to take seriously saying, hey, my life, scale of 1 to 10, how much does it look like Christ? Now, I want to admit from the beginning, this is a seriously flawed diagnostic tool, okay? Like it's so simplistic. I mean, this is just like one step better than your Facebook survey for what Disney character you are. It's a self-diagnosis. That's the worst kind of diagnosis, actually. Later on, you should ask some people around you this same question about yourself. But for now, just ask it of yourself. And here's another big problem with this survey. I'm letting you use whatever definition's in your head right now of what it means to even look like Christ. You may or may not have an accurate image of that, but just do the best you can, okay? Scale of 1 to 10, right now, where are you in terms of, yes, my life looks like Christ? Lock it in. Got it? You got it? All right. Second question. Where do you want to be? Scale of 1 to 10. Where do you want to be in terms of your life looking like Christ? I want you to be completely honest. And I think this is a way more interesting question than the first one. Hopefully, your number didn't go down, right? If you were like a 7 here and you're like, but I'm hoping for a 4, I don't know what to do with that. I will say this, we survey our whole church every year, and consistently over the last number of years, 1/3 of you tell us, I know how to take next steps in my faith, but I'm not interested. And I appreciate the honesty, and I'm always perplexed by I guess they're a 7 and they want to be a 7. I guess that's what it is. But it's so wild to me. This number, I just think, well, wherever you are, right? There's probably good reasons for why you are where you are. Maybe you're a 9 right now, and that's awesome. Maybe you're a 6, and you used to be a 9, but life has been beating you up lately. And I understand that, because sometimes our spiritual journey does go backwards for a temporary season, hopefully, because of what life is throwing our way. Maybe you're just a 4, but honestly, you walked in here just a few weeks ago, and you were a 2, so you're on an upward trajectory as a 4. I think that's awesome. But this number, the one where you want to be, oh my goodness, that's everything. Many years ago, I was sitting at Shoop's here in St. John with a guy across the table from me, and I asked him this question. Hey, in terms of your spiritual life, your maturity, you're like Christ, where do you want to be? And he said to me, probably a 6. And I'm like, I don't get that. You got to give him a little credit. He was sitting across the table from his pastor, and he didn't say 10, right? But maybe, and honesty is the best thing, maybe you're saying 6. And I think, like, how do you come up with that number? How do you think, you know what I want? I want like a half devoted life to God. I look forward to the day when I meet my maker and I get to tell him, yeah, I just kind of mailed it in. Maybe you don't really think that a sense of peace or joy or an ability to navigate tough things goes up as your number goes up. Maybe you think it would cost too much. But it is an absolutely fascinating question. Now, just yesterday, I was having lunch with another friend of mine. This friend is not a follower of Jesus, and I'm trying to lead him to become a follower of Jesus. And he asked me about you. He asked me about Suncrest, about our church. And he's like, hey, tell me kind of like average person. I'm like, well, there's not really an average person. Let me give you my assessment of what I think is true of the crowd that's in front of me every weekend. I said, I think you can split it into 30%, 30%, 30%, 10%. 30% on what we'll call the top end. And maybe this is you. 30% of people in front of me are followers of Jesus. They're devoted to being followers of Jesus. They're pretty focused on the faith element of their life. They truly want to grow. They're trying to raise their family in that way. They understand the legacy that their life can have. They want to make a difference in the world. I think that's 30%, like pretty focused. I think there's another 30% that wants to be pretty focused, but man, life is throwing some stuff at them right now, and it's just hard. They're juggling it. They would probably say that they're failing in certain ways right now, but to me, it's like, but at least they're here. They're trying to figure out how I can take some steps, how I can hold on. Maybe I just have to hold on long enough so I can get into that other 30% so I can really focus on it, but like they're fighting for it. They're fighting for it. I said, I do think there's 30%, at least the survey tells me so, that are kind of sitting here like this. And he's like, what does that mean? I said, I think it means that they want to call themselves a Christian. They want people to know they go to church. They like the idea of some of the things that we talk about, but they're not interested in changing. They're really not. I mean, there's not an openness. It's been a long time since they took something that happened here and implemented it in their life and changed things. Just 30%. And then 10% of people here aren't followers of Jesus. And I'm glad that you're here. I hope that you're on a journey to eventually become one. But I'm really curious which category you're in. So I want to talk a little bit over the next 4 weeks, or a lot actually, about what it means to truly be a follower of Jesus. So let me try a couple things out on you. For the follower of Jesus, I think the answer to every spiritual question is, what would make my life like Christ? This isn't the question I usually get asked, but it is actually the answer to this question is the answer to all of your questions. People ask me things like, how do I grow in my faith? How do I have a stronger commitment to Christ? How do I experience more of God in my life? How do I have real spiritual experiences and those sorts of things? And whether you're on the beginning of your journey or whether you've been doing this for 40 years, those questions are the same because they scale no matter where you are on your journey. And the answer to all of those questions is the same answer. The answer is, well, I want you to orient your life to being like Christ. Like Christ. But it's more than that. This is a big deal. It's not just the answer to every spiritual question. For the follower of Jesus, not the 10% of you who aren't followers of Jesus, or maybe the 40% of you who aren't followers of Jesus. But to the ones of us who are followers of Jesus, it's not just the answer to every spiritual question, it's actually the answer to every question of life. The questions you and I ask in life: how do I find more peace? How do I control me and my big mouth? How do I live a life that has purpose and meaning to it? The answers to all of those are Well, what would it look like for your life to be like Christ? And it's even more practical than that. When you ask yourself the question, should I buy a bigger house? The right way to think about it is, would that make my life look more like Christ? When you consider, should I take the new job opportunity? The main question for a follower of Jesus is, well, am I going to be able to do that? Is that going to help me to look more like Christ? When you're raising your kids and you're deciding on the priorities for them and what you're going to sign them up for, all those sorts of things, the main question is, but what would make us look more like Christ? It isn't just the central spiritual question. It is the central question for anyone who's a follower of Jesus. And so I want to help you to see something that I think is way too vague to most people. I want to take a concept that lives, I think, in complexity for most and make it very, very simple. To help us see how the scriptures teach us to arrange and construct our lives in order to have this real experience with God, to move up the scale and how we feel like we're doing with our faith. And simply to just be a follower of Jesus. Some of you pay attention to my words pretty closely, and I've had so many people ask me this, say, Greg, I hear when you're speaking most of the time, you use the term follower of Jesus. You call us followers of Jesus. You don't call us Christians. You use the term follower of Jesus. Why do you do that? And this is the answer to that question. Because what Jesus' invitation to us is to come follow him, to act like he acts, to think like he thinks, to let our hearts be broken by the same things his heart is broken by, to be like Christ. And actually the word Christian, though I think it's lost some of its meaning in today's world, when it first was established, the word Christian actually just means little Christ. Little Christ, it means you look like Christ. So I'm going to read a whole series of passages here. I'm not trying to dive into any single one of them. I'm actually trying to help you see the breadth of the scriptures, how they all point to the same thing. So let me just read a long list of scriptures here. This is Paul in 1 Corinthians 11. He says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. What would you aim your life at? You'd aim it to be like Christ. In Philippians 2, it says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. And then he's going to lead the followers of Jesus to take a posture of humility toward one another, bearing with one another, because that's what Jesus did, and we want to be like Christ. John says, whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. The whole orientation of our life, what it means to be spiritual, is to live like Christ. Peter says this, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. There is actually an invitation to suffering that is part of the life like Christ, and the capacity to deal with suffering comes with it. In Ephesians 5, it says, follow God's example, walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. This phrase, just as Christ, is all over the New Testament. The idea is that you and I, we know what the aim of our life is. It's to be like Christ. Just later in this chapter, he personalizes. He says, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, sacrificed himself for her. That's the calling to a husband. In Romans 15, it says, may the God who gives you endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind toward each other that Christ Jesus had. Accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you. And he calls on us to forgive just as Christ, to love just as Christ, just as Christ. This is the orientation of our lives. And so over the next 4 weeks, I want to teach you the ways to be like Christ. I don't want it to be mysterious to anyone. And actually, this is a very big deal here at our church. If you've been around, you know that our church likes to make things practical. We like to help people see how it works in everyday life. We don't want it to be confusing. I'm not trying to present concepts that seem impressive to you but don't work in life. And so, get this, almost 20 years ago now, our leadership as a church went on a deep dive. This took us months and months and months of conversation, of debate, of study to say we know that the orientation that we want to help people grow in their faith is that they should be like Christ. But how can we break that down for people so that in everyday sorts of ways they can really see this is what it means? This is what I could focus on if I want to be like Christ. Let's actually give them practices that they can do so that they become more and more like Christ. And for 20 years now, we've used the same 4 words. They start with C, and we have seen it shape our church. Hear me say this. When I put together a teaching calendar over the course of the year, I test it against this. Hey, are we helping with this C? Are we helping with this C? Are we helping with this C? When I coach our pastors to lead you spiritually, when you call and set up an appointment and you talk to one of our pastors, they have in their mind, this is how we would help people be like Christ. And so these are our 4 C's. Cultivate a trust relationship with God. It's at the center of what Christ did. You read John chapter 15. You see how he prayed to the Father. You see how he reflected the Father. It's all about trust. It's a big deal. One of our weeks will be on that. To contribute by serving. It was Jesus who said, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve and give my life as a ransom for many. And it's why I don't hesitate for a moment to ask you to serve, to organize your life so that it's for the good of others, that you're giving a significant amount of your time and your energy to serve because it makes you like Christ and it actually makes you happier. You may or may not believe it. To care about lost people. It was Jesus who said, the whole reason I came was to seek and save those who are lost. That's why he came. And if that's who Christ was, then we would be like Christ. We'd have the same burdens he does. We'd have the same mission that he does. And as this shapes our life, it will stir you spiritually. And then we connect in life-changing relationships. To understand that while you might imagine that the way you grow is to pay attention to your vertical relationship with God, the secret sauce that Jesus knew was that he was going to put some people around him. He had 12 disciples. He had an inner circle of 3. He had people who would speak into his life, and he would speak into theirs, even Jesus. And actually, if you have these kind of friends in your life, it will help you with the other 3 C's. And if you do not have them in your life, you will be a lot like I was in my 20s. Like, I can't quite figure it out. So let me spend just my remaining time on this connect C. And over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at these other C's. This is the formula, right? These are the practices. And let me say this before I lean into this. If I, as a pastor, ask you to be like Christ, but I didn't show you the actual practices to get there, nor did I invite you into the power of Christ that can progress you through it, it would be malpractice on my part. To ask you to somehow behave like Christ, to make your life like his without giving you the practices to get there and the invitation to the power that he offers. And as much as that would be malpractice on my part, if you expect of yourself to become like Christ, but you don't give attention to these practices, you don't think, how did Jesus actually live and how would I arrange my life and what practices get me there, and you try to do it on your own power without the power of God, that's not malpractice, but it's malformation. You are setting yourself up to fail, to think that you would be more and more like Christ without these 4 practices. And so, let's talk about that connect in life-changing relationships for just a few minutes. The scriptures begin this way. This is Genesis. The Lord God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. From the beginning of creation, he's communicating to us that God is relational and we are relational. It's not good for your spiritual life to be alone. You will not be stronger by being alone. You need people in your life. In the New Testament, it says this, therefore encourage one another and build each other up. I just pulled one example, get this, of 59 examples in the New Testament where this phrase, one another, is used about the church. This one is encourage one another. Sometimes it says love one another. Sometimes it says forgive one another. Sometimes it says spur one another on toward love and good deeds. There's all of them. But the whole idea is you'll have to do this together with a group of friends. You are not going to do this solo. And then in Ephesians chapter 4, it says this. If you want to become mature, if you want to, let's say, get to a 7 or an 8 or a 9 in what it means to be like Christ, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ, that you're just becoming more and more like Christ, then you'll no longer be infants. You won't get tossed back and forth by the waves. When tough things come up in life, when you get the diagnosis, when you lose a relationship, when somebody betrays you, it will not flatten you. It won't anymore. Not if you've attained the full measure of maturity, of fullness in Christ. And you won't be blown here and there by every wind. When someone says something, you're like, I don't know, maybe I agree with that. You will know, like, oh, that's either right or that's wrong. I don't have to be blown around anymore. I know. I have cultivated a trust relationship with God. I've connected in life-changing relationships. I've contributed by serving. These things stabilize us in life. Instead, speaking the truth in love, that's how we will grow to become, in every respect, the mature body of Christ. You know, this speaking the truth in love is challenging, right? Because some people don't want to hear the truth, and some people don't want to tell the truth. There are some people who like to tell the truth, but they don't like to do it in love, and that's a problem too. But if you had a real friend, you would have someone in your life who's speaking the truth in love. Just a few weeks ago, I was having lunch with a longtime friend of mine. Honestly, just true story. He's one of the friends I found after I heard that sermon in my 20s, and now, 20 plus years later, we're great friends. I was having lunch with him, and the truth is, I was whining. Hey, it'd been a tough season, hard things going on, some things that were frustrating to me. I mean, he's a safe place, so I could just kind of vomit it all up to him, right? And he listened just long enough to know that I knew he cared. You got to have somebody to vent to a little bit, right? And then he turned to the conversation. He's like, Greg, you know how good you have it, right? He said, I understand those are tough things going on, and maybe we can sort out a little bit how to take some steps. But like this posture that I've heard for the last 10 minutes of, honestly, you're kind of whining, Greg. I don't think that matches. And it was good for me. It was somebody I trust, somebody I know loves me, and he was just speaking the truth in love. And we all need people like that in our lives. And so I just have a couple questions for you. Which of these is your story? 2 options. Option 1, I have a group of friends, and we help each other be like Christ. Just real quick, real honest. You have a circle of friends, and they are speaking the truth in love. They'll tell you when you're whining. They'll walk with you through the tough things. They'll go like you've. This is the point. You've connected in life-changing relationships, like Christ did. Or I could use a group of friends who help each other be like Christ. This is the question. Which one of these are you? And of course, as awesome as it is to be part of a group of friends that do that, as you keep maturing in your faith, you become the kind of person who would take responsibility to gather a group of friends, who would lead a group of people, who would build friendships with each other and speak the truth in love to one another. And so, I want to invite you into that. And of course, Suncrest is here to help you with that. If you don't have life-changing relationships, human relationships with other followers of Jesus, that's going to be really, really difficult. You know, I run into people from time to time, and I'm like, hey, I'll just tell you a story. I was in the Commons, this is a few years ago. A guy comes up to me, and he's asking my advice. He's telling me his marriage is in a tough spot. What are you going to do? And he comes to me, And he's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. I said, well, do you have somebody to talk to about this? He's like, yeah, I've been talking to one of my buddies at work. And I asked him, I said, did your buddy have a good marriage? He's like, actually, my buddy, he's not married. He's been divorced 3 times. He said that. And until he said it out loud to me, he didn't realize what a dumb idea it was to get advice from someone who didn't have it figured out, probably didn't have his best interest in mind, certainly wasn't prone to tell him to do the tough things that would honor Christ. So, what does connecting at Suncrest look like? I'm going to show you some pictures real quick, actually. Here's the first picture. This is from our Rooted celebration this past Tuesday night. This is Jaya. I love Jaya. Don't you all love Jaya? I mean, if you know Jaya, you love her. Oh, she's sitting right there. How about that? She was one of many people who stood right here and told what 10 weeks in a group had meant to her. And this was her previous self. Lost in the church and life, here's her new self. I have a group. I feel a lot closer to God. I mean, 10 weeks of building real friendships, it starts to shape that in us. And it's not just her. I mean, think about this. There were these groups that just got shaped. They all had their own stories in certain ways. Here's another picture of one of those groups. I loved kind of the joyfulness of this. Here's the last group. This is actually kind of my most favorite. They couldn't get it together. They were just like laughing and trying to climb on each other. But this is what connecting looks like at Suncrest. Can I give you a few ideas behind it? First of all, it's holistic. We involve the scriptures when we connect in these groups, but we intentionally don't call these Bible studies. Because it's not about some academic pursuit of Bible knowledge. It's so much more than that. It's about friendship and integrating the scriptures in our lives and talking with one another about how that works for us and how it works for them and connecting in life-changing relationships. It's friendship. This is not group therapy. It's not one leader disseminating information to everyone, and it's friendship, and it's what all of us need to some degree. And let me tell you, it is commitment. It's not an outrageous commitment, right? For the people who did Rooted, they committed 10 weeks to something. There's an opportunity right now, starting right now, for a 4-week, check it out sort of group experience that's actually built around these 4 C's. And it's beautiful. In fact, I want to talk about this a little more, but let me give you the sign-up info here real quick. If you text sign up to 94,000, I mean, honestly, if you're like, I really don't have a group of friends that help me to look more like Christ, then this is a great way to step in. Now, it is a commitment, right? I don't have a way for you to do this if you don't prioritize it in your life. I know many people who think this is a good idea. You know, it'd be nice to be part of a group. It'd probably build out my faith. Might make me look more like Christ. Maybe even what Greg's talking about here, that it could immediately change the course of things and over time change me. It's possible. But there are things competing for your attention. And this is the moment. That whatever reasons you might say no to doing a group, you say, actually, this time, I'm going to let connecting and life-changing relationships win. I'm going to give up other things. I'm going to say no to other things. I'm going to deprioritize other things so I can say yes to this and make it as a commitment of your life. And so this is what I want to encourage you to do. To get crystal clear on growing in your faith, to aim at something higher than you are now, some number higher than you are now. Understand that it will be putting these 4 practices, these 4 categories into our lives, and starting with this one, to make sure that you have connection in life-changing relationships. And if you don't have it, I want you to let us help. You can just text that number. You can text it right now if you'd like. I would love for you to text it before you leave this room. You could text that number this weekend. I mean, if you just pray about it a little bit, and you'll do whatever God leads you to do. You could text it this weekend. You got to do it by this weekend, though, because the groups are going to start. There's actually, if you'd rather do it on analog rather than digital, there's a luncheon this Sunday at 12:45 that you could come to right back here at the building. And in person, you could meet some of the people who are going to lead these groups and see what would be a good connection for you. But whatever it is, you can do it, and we can help. And I believe it will make you more like Christ. Well, I really hope that was helpful for integrating faith with life. Listen, if you're in Northwest Indiana, I'd love to have you join us in person. Head over to suncrest.org and plan your visit.